When we simplify rational expressions that contain parentheses, it forces us to use the distributive property. And when we use the distributive property on these expressions, it basically removes the parentheses. I like to refer to it as removing parentheses, and that's always our first step. Once that step is completed, we can then combine like terms if there are any, but sometimes there aren't. None of these first three examples, we're going to use the distributive property to remove the parentheses that you see here, but there won't be any like terms to combine in these first three. We're just going to practice distributing. We have 3 times y plus 6. So we look at that number or sign that's in front of the parentheses, and we always distribute it to what is behind or inside the parentheses. So I say 3 times y is 3y, and then I say 3 times 6 is 18. And there are no like terms here, so 3y plus 18 is the final answer. Negative 2 times x plus 11. So x and 11 are inside of that parentheses. And so I distribute the negative 2 to the x first, and I get negative 2x. And then I distribute the negative 2 to the 11, and I get minus 22. Negative 2 times positive 11. And there are no like terms here, just as we said there wouldn't be. So this is our final answer. In this example, we have negative out front, just a negative. We can assume that's a negative 1. Negative 1 times 3x plus 2y plus z minus 1. So we distribute that negative 1 to everything behind the parentheses. And I'll put that right there. So negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. Negative 1 times a positive 2y is negative 2y. Negative 1 times z is just minus z, negative z. And then negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And again, we have no like terms, so this would be our final answer. Negative 3z minus 2y minus z plus 1. In our next 4 examples, we're going to still be using that distributive property, but in some of these, we're going to have to combine like terms. So we're going to add another level of difficulty to this. So we have 4 times x minus 6 plus 20. I think it's always very important to read the problem for it first. 4 times x minus 6 plus 20. So the number in front of the parentheses, the 4, is going to be multiplied by everything that's behind the parentheses. So notice that the 20 is not inside of the parentheses, so that 4 does not get distributed to the 20. It only gets distributed to the x and to the negative 6 right there. So 4 times x is 4x, and then 4 times negative 6 is negative 24, and then we just have a plus 20. Now, in this example, once we've got rid of the parentheses, removed the parentheses, we have like terms. And I'm just going to circle those. The 24, the negative 24, and the positive 20 are just a number. They don't have a variable with them. So I can combine those. I'm going to bring the 4x down, and then negative 24 plus 20 is just negative 4. So 4x minus 4 is our final answer. Let me put a box around it for y'all. 5 minus 3x plus 9. So let's see. In front of the parentheses, we have this negative sign. And just like one of the problems that we just worked, I'm going to assume that this is negative 1 right here. And we're going to remove the parentheses. So we always look at the number that's in front of the parenthesis. So that's negative 1. And we distribute that to the numbers behind the parentheses. So really, the 5 in this case just comes down. The 5 does not get distributed in any form. So now I can distribute and remove the parentheses. Negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. And negative 1 times positive 9 is negative 9. I've removed the parentheses, but now I can combine like terms. I'm just going to circle the ones that are like terms. So that's a 5 and a negative 9. So the 3x comes down, the negative 3x comes down, and 5 plus a negative 9 is negative 4. And this would be our final answer. Our next example is fun because we see something different here. We have two sets of parentheses. So we're going to get ready to remove the parentheses. Both sets. So in this first set right here, I see that I have a negative 3 out front in front of the parentheses, and I'm going to distribute it to everything behind or inside of the parentheses. And in the set in the back, we have a minus out front, and I assume that that's minus 1. And I have to distribute that to everything inside the parentheses. So let's try it. Negative 3 times 7x is negative 21x. And then negative 3 times positive 1 is negative 3. Negative 1 times positive 4x is negative 4x. And then negative 1 times a negative 2 is positive 2. Negative times a negative is a positive. And now I can combine my like terms. So I notice here that I have two terms that have an x, and then two more terms that are just numbers. I like to draw shapes around them, and the like terms have the same shapes, and that way I know visually whenever I get ready to combine those like terms that the same shapes come together. So I got two squares and two circles there. So a negative 21x and a negative 4x would give me negative 25x. And then a negative 3 and a positive 2 would give me a negative 1. And let me redraw that so you can clearly see it. Negative 25x minus 1 would be our final answer. So in this example, we have 8 plus 11 times 2y minus 9. Remember, I always like to just take the time and read it to myself before I start jumping to conclusions. 8 plus 11 times 2y minus 9. So we're removing the parentheses, and in front of the parentheses we have an 8 plus 11, but look, the 11 is the only thing getting multiplied, and it gets multiplied by everything that's inside. So we bring down that 8, and we say 11 times 2y is 22y, and then 11 times negative 9 is negative 99. And then I combine my like terms. So I get 22y, and then when I say 8 minus 99, I get negative 91. So 22y minus 91